Next up in my review series, I'm going to take a look at the Rome sequences. Now, in these sequences, I did start to have some problems with the film. I know some people have commented already about some dodgy bits and the criminal underuse of some actors in the film. So if I start at the beginning, when we leave London and we see Bond behind the wheel of his stolen DB10 by this point, and we get a nice just a glimpse of the gadgets in store. And it's interesting that they have a less refined way of leaving their buttons. They look rough and ready. It was a prototype mentioned by Q, so I guess that explains why it doesn't look quite as polished as some of his cars of old. You'd expect them to be much more refined in this day and age with advanced technology. So I guess they were the sample buttons before they were put into good use. So you get a kind of glimpse of what's in store. In all good Bond films, they don't mention the gadgets. They wait for us as an audience to discover what they're going to be. So first of all, we see Bond attending the funeral of Sciarra. As instructed by M, he had to go along and uncover a lead there. Again, M left it up to Bond to decide for himself what he was discovering. He decided to home in on the widow, of course. Particularly as she looked like Monica Bellucci. Who can blame him? And there was a kind of an awkward chat between the two of them. He seems to be threatening her. I wasn't sure what to make of his conversation, because he did seem a bit aggressive towards her when she hasn't really done anything wrong. She's just been a victim of a gangster type bloke. But there are kind of foreshadowings, and we get a nice pun from Craig about knowing her husband recently and being in the field of life insurance. But we do get a bit of an aggressive talk towards Monica Bellucci before she gets summoned off by her two minders, who aren't her minders actually. They're just going to kill her later on. There was a nice bit here before we move to Lucia's kind of villa, whereby Bond gives a nice little sideways wave to one of the minders before he walks off. You can really imagine, well, any of them really, but Connery, Moore, Brosnan, you can see them in that position doing that kind of thing. So it's nice to see that kind of humour returning. So next up we have Lucia walking through her villa, pouring herself a last drink, putting on the operatic music. She knows her time has come. The two minders are obviously Spectre assassins who are going to take her out, so she can't reveal anything regarding Sciarra's dealings. And just as she's about to be shot from behind, we hear the two silenced pistol rounds and the two bodies slumped to the ground. And we know exactly who it is. Bond has saved her. Again, we get a nice little line here. Again, very Roger Moore-esque. I view this line as being, whereby she says, "You've only bought me 5 more minutes," and Daniel Craig says, "Perfect, time for a drink." So it's very much a Roger Moore type line. That humour does work very well. It's not in your face. It's subtle enough, and does work well within this film. So then we have Bond getting angry again very quickly, chucking the Bollinger on the floor. Then we have the seduction scene, which shows Bond's quick work. It is really remarkably quick how quickly he seduces Monica Bellucci. And I think lots of people have commented on it before, but this is probably the most sexy James Bond delivery of the line. Yes, it's probably one of the best that at least Craig's done, but certainly in the series as a whole, it's one of the best deliveries, bar possibly Sean Connery's entry into the series in Dr. No. So we then see Craig leaving her a note. We get a nice mention of Felix at this point, whereby he's arranged for her to be picked up so she can go to safety. I'm presuming Felix gets her in time, or sends someone to save her in time, because obviously with two Spectre assassins having not checked in, saying they've assassinated their target, you would think that Spectre would send someone very quickly to find her. So we'd hope there's an American embassy somewhere near so they can whisk her off to safety. And we do get one, I'm going to say, perfect shot of Monica Bellucci lying in bed. And that's all we see of her. That's it. She's gone. No more Monica Bellucci. Despite all of the kind of the hype surrounding her. Obviously, it's a big name actress starring in a Bond film. An actress that many claim should have been in the Bond series a long time ago. And then there was a big deal about her being older than Bond and being senior to Bond, but nothing much came of it. She gave a bit of exposition to inform Bond that the Spectre meeting was taking place in Rome, conveniently. That was it. She didn't really have much use. But one would presume that she's still alive, so there's always potential that she could come back into the series at a later date, so I have to wait and see if they do make use of her. Although, as you'll find with my thoughts later on in this series, there is a potential for lots of new characters to return, so I don't think they want to overdo it too much in the bringing back characters stakes there. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last we see of Monica Bellucci in this the Bond series. So we have Bond driving off then to the Spectre meeting. Lots of really expensive cars in the car park. So it just shows that crime pays, apparently. And it's remarkably small on security, given this is a rare meeting behind one of the biggest terrorist organisations in the world, and Bond just seems to be able to waltz in. The ring obviously helps, and they obviously immediately have their suspicions. Maybe it was part of the plan that he was going to appear there, because obviously Blofeld was aware of his presence in Rome when he caught a glimpse of him at the funeral. So it was probably part of the plan, just to get Bond on edge when he makes the reveal later on. We'd have a very strange dubbed line from Daniel Craig in Italian, one would presume. Why they felt the need to dub that, unless Daniel Craig's delivery wasn't convincing. But it did seem very out of place, the whole Mickey Mouse line. So then we have the very Thunderball-esque Spectre meeting room, much more busy this time round. There's obviously the table with one would presume the key members of Spectre surrounding it, but obviously we've got people crowding around in all sorts of different places on the balconies and in the kind of doorways, so it does appear like a much more fully fledged Spectre than the Spectre of old. This really does give an indicator of the organisation being everywhere, hinted by Quantum of Solace. Mr. White mentions it there, and he mentions it again in this film, saying they're everywhere, or he's everywhere, the leader. So it does give an indicator of a massive organisation. So this scene was fine. It kind of showed that they were having dealings and other things. They mentioned the global surveillance aspect of the film, so they were obviously referring to the Nine Eyes project. I did find the lead talking us through this scene was quite difficult to understand at times. Obviously we had the subtitles for what must have been planned to be the Irma Bunt character, but I did find the other man quite difficult to understand. Obviously then we have Waltz entering for the first time, with his face in shadow, of course, to not give too much away, even though everyone knows it's him. And I do like the presence he has in this scene. Everyone stops, stands to attention. He has their respect and authority, and he obviously has the microphone just too far away from him to speak into, so he just does a slight head gesture to his minder in behind, who comes forward, drags the microphone slightly forward, and then he delivers his line. Don't let me keep you, or something along those lines. that just shows his authority. It shows that they are waiting on his beck and call, and his confirmation that they can continue their discussion. So I did like that, and it does. I didn't think that led into the film very much further on. The organisation itself kind of fizzled out, and Blofeld was left on his own. I'd have personally, I'm jumping to the end now, but I would personally like to have seen Blofeld escape at the end, because this organisation, there are lots of key members here and in high profile positions, so it was a bit disappointing that kind of fizzled out, having seen this kind of force of a meeting earlier on. We then have the discussion surrounding who's going to take down the Pale King, i.e. Mr. White. Obviously Sciarra's left a position open, and his close colleague steps forward and offers his position, saying there's no more sign of weakness. Now, some people are kind of referring to the next bit as being similar to the electrocuting chair, where they use Hinks to take out this member for speaking out. I didn't personally view it as that. I viewed it as Hinks is just wanting to show his position within the organisation. He's not seated at the table, which would suggest he's a junior member. So him taking out this SPECTRE member, who has spoken out against the organisation, claiming that they have shown some weakness. But I just viewed it as him stepping up and taking out the competition, rather than actually being used as an assassin or as a execution method, if you like. One thing people have picked up on, I did notice this as well, the very long fingernails, but apparently they're iron fingernails, which makes the eye gouging scene the whole lot worse when you realise they are quite pointy and sharp and hurty. So that just adds another dimension to his character, I guess. They weren't signposted, they were very subtle, but maybe this is his version of the bowler hat or the steel teeth. So we have that on the edge of a 15 kind of scene where the eyes get gouged out, and then he just nonchalantly cracks his head and cracks his neck, and he's dead. So Hinks takes his position. And then nothing is made of that. They all seem quite happy with that, so that may add some kind of suggestion that he is used as the executioner within this meeting. But then, obviously, Waltz chooses this moment to sound out Bond, who's obviously been standing watching in the crowd. So he refers to him as Cuckoo, which we find out later on was referring to the fact that he'd come into his family home and taken over, basically, as a cuckoo would. And obviously then Bond panics because he's stuck in this SPECTRE meeting. He's been caught out, which I don't really know what he was expecting, really. He went into this meeting not knowing what to expect, not knowing who was going to be there, and he's seemingly there unarmed. So he just kind of walked into the snake's pit, if you like, and didn't really have an escape route. Luckily, though, the bold man that he was confronted by when he entered the meeting turns him around, and he gives him a nice headbutt, chucks him over the railings, and off he goes, and that commences the car chase. And I've already mentioned this in my initial reaction video. I wasn't a huge fan of the car chase. Didn't really lead to much. There was no kind of danger involved. Now, I was against the idea also of the henchman's car having gadgets just like Bond's car. But there was no danger. It didn't feel like Hinks was going to do anything about catching him. The only time it could have come to an end, as it did come to an end, when they were coming up against an obstacle which Bond got out of. But that was the only way that Hinks was really going to succeed, because they're matching each other horsepower for horsepower, unless he smacked him off the road, but that would take some doing. So there was no kind of stake to the car chase, and I did see some comments about the car chase being something Top Gear would probably put together, just a battle of supercars and driving through a quiet Rome. That would be Top Gear's idea of a film, car chase. I do like, however, the changes that they made to the standard Bond's got gadgets in his car, the villain doesn't, this is going to be easy. Whereby obviously Bond has stolen this prototype car and it hasn't been loaded with anything, so we have the nice scene where the ammunition isn't loaded. Obviously we have the atmosphere button, which you'd think would perhaps, I thought it was going to be, a gas cloud coming out of the back to blind the pursuing driver, but obviously the atmosphere was the atmospheric music for 009, which went down very well. The only weapon that did obviously work was the jest blast coming out of the exhaust, which again didn't seem to do much. You would have liked to have seen his car blow up or something and then him walk out unscathed, but he kind of kept on going. Lucky it was a straight bit of road. So again, the weapon didn't really do much to stop him. It just burnt up the front of his car and wrote it off eventually, but didn't really achieve too much. I know people are of different minds of this, but I quite liked also the calling back to Moneypenny. Considering the car chase itself wasn't that thrilling, they had to do something, so I quite like the idea of calling back to London and doing some research in the middle of a car chase, which worked well. And then obviously we had the interplay between Bond and Moneypenny when Bond found out she was sharing her bed for the night. That seemed to get Bond's back up there. I did see some comments also about the car chase being more boring than seeing Moneypenny draw out a glass of something from the fridge, but I think that's being a bit unfair. But yeah, there wasn't much in the way of stakes in that car chase. And we did again get some more Roger Moore-esque humour with the kind of chubby Italian guy in his small Fiat 500 blocking Bond's way. Again, I would have imagined the Jaguar could have caught up quite quickly there. There was a kind of massive gap which didn't seem quite possible, but I did like the speeding up of the Fiat, and the airbag going off got the biggest laugh in the audience. I was in for one of the showings, so that joke did go down well. Then Hinks just kind of disappeared after that. They were in a single alleyway. You'd think that Hinks couldn't lose him, but he did just kind of vanish just to allow the phone call to take place. So that was a bit of a hole in the plotting there. So I've talked about the gadgets and the jet blast coming out of the back of the car. So it's good to see at least one gadget making an appearance in the car. And obviously the thought of some others, which shows that they are willing to put their gadgets back in the cars, which we'll see. Obviously we did have that in Skyfall as well, but that was the old car, so we knew those were there. Then we have the nice touch at the end of Bond using the ejector seat on himself, which makes a nice change. It's usually used to dispatch villains in the passenger seat, or obviously used in Die Another Day to flip the car itself. But it's nice to see Craig's Bond using it to actually escape a perilous situation by avoiding the dead end and smashing, and then Hinks being able to catch him. So we had the nice bit at the end where he floats down on the parachute and off he goes. You'd think that Hinks would be fast on his tail, but obviously he didn't attempt to track him down then. So that was the Rome sequence. Obviously we have the shot of the Aston Martin disappearing into the river, which is a very depressing thought. Again, for all of the hype that the cars got for this film, and then appearing for not much more than 10 minutes, if that, again, did seem a bit of a disappointment. So the Rome sequence really was marred by the underuse of first Monica Bellucci, and then the beautiful Aston Martin DB10 as well. So that was a shame, but yeah, it had to happen, I guess. So the Rome sequence, overall, I think was fine. There were some bits, as I've mentioned, which I don't think worked so well. And the car chase was a bit of a disappointment, considering all of the video logs that they've been releasing and all of the promotion for the cars featured. They were a bit of a disappointment at the end of it all. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the Rome sequence. So next up, I'll be doing a video on the Austria sequences. So tracking down Mr. White, and then obviously we have the the plane chase, chasing Hinks's motorcade through the mountains. So thank you for watching, and I'll release my next review video in the next week.